we're beginning to understand how important mental health is. Our minds are like complex mazes, and therapy can help us navigate through our life experiences. Although traditional in-person therapy isn't for everyone, sessions can be inconvenient and expensive. Thankfully, now there's Talkspace, the online talk therapy platform that's with you 24/7. Talkspace makes therapy accessible. It gives you immediate access to a licensed therapist at any time, wherever you are. And with over 5,000 licensed therapists, Talkspace will pair you with the right therapist for you, based on your needs and your budget. You can invest in your mental health today and join over 1 million people who already feel happier at Talkspace.com. You'll get 24/7 access from your phone or computer to a licensed therapist that fits your needs, and you'll only pay a fraction of the price of traditional therapy. Don't forget to use promo code SILENT for $100 off your first month. That's Talkspace.com, promo code SILENT.
Silent Waves contains material that may be distressing for some listeners. If any of the content is triggering for you, please refer to the support organisations in our show notes. Act 6.
I know what you're doing, and I want to be part of it. It's like, this is our family thing.
Glenn is my father's foster son from a previous marriage. He had a falling out with my father in 1994 and had been estranged from my family ever since. Then, one night in August 2017, he came over to my place, ready to talk. So we might break it up into a few parts, sequentially, how the story kind of unfolded. Like how you met Ralph, how you came to call him Dad.
How long have you got?
I've got as long as you need. My name is Raquel O'Brien, and this is Silent Waves. Born in country Victoria in 1968, Glenn had a troubled relationship with his parents. At age 11, he was a victim of domestic violence.
Yeah, so I was at the police station. I'd been taken there by a friend's mother because I'd gone there. I'd run away from home after getting bashed, so I ended up at a friend's place. And she was quite disturbed by the fact that I was so bruised, damaged by my father. She said, you have to go to the police. And I said, I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that. And eventually she convinced me that I had to. And my dad turned up and said, I'm not taking him, you can keep him. Don't want him. So I ended up in a boys' home. And I disappeared with people that were rather well versed in criminal activity. I got into more trouble. So I've got a criminal record that exists pretty much from the entire time from I was 11 till almost 13. And I've got quite a long record for that time. It doesn't exist after that. And that was Ralph's influence.
Glenn was taken in by temporary foster parents and returned to school.
Me not doing very well at school, they said, we need to get a tutor for him. And Ralph had been volunteering as a tutor. And we got along really well straight away. And he helped me with my maths and English. I was always very good at reading, and I always got straight into it, but he encouraged that. And he taught me how to be proper about the way I presented sentences, the way I spoke.
Offenders choose children very carefully. A child who is seeking affection from an adult figure can very easily be coerced. At 12, Glenn spent more and more time with my father. Eventually, Ralph fostered Glenn himself.
I think, from my memory, I turned 13 in his care. I kind of relied on it in certain ways, I guess, when I was very young. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was how I was getting forward. It's how I was making stuff work. What I got out of it was a happy home, a family that I didn't have, school, motorbikes, farm. It was awesome. He helped me get through school like you wouldn't believe. I actually achieved HSC, and I was due to go on to mechanics. I was due to leave school at 14, 15.
For Glenn, my dad represented what a father should be, but there were strings attached.
The first time he ever actually made any kind of advances, I guess, I always thought that was kind of nice, you know, it's like someone cared for me in a different way. How deep do you want to go?
Go for it. Nothing shocks me.
In so many ways, Ralph and I had what you would refer to as a relationship.
The nuances of abuser-child relationships appear different in each case. It's especially complex when a role model acts as both parent and abuser. Glenn loved my father as his own.
Something that might appear to be quite incongruent with a history of abuse, when you come to understand it, it really does make sense.
This is Dr. Vivian Waller. She's the principal solicitor at Waller Legal, representing sexual assault survivors for 22 years.
When we really reflect on that and understand how this offending is occurring and understanding that it's really occurring at close quarters by trusted individuals, it's extremely confusing for children. Nothing more confusing for kids than having someone who's supposed to love and care for them doing something that is actually harmful. And really, it's the cunning and the sophistication often of a practiced offender against the innocence and the trust of a child. And those things don't always add up at face value.
I'm interested about the grooming process. Did it start as a game or did it start as
Yes, very much a game. I don't remember exactly how it started, but it was all almost very friendly and happy and, yay. And then all of a sudden, things were happening, tossing off together and stuff like that. It was kind of weird. But at the same time, I didn't think it was weird because I thought I'm in a situation where I'm loved. I'm getting what I need out of life. And I've never had this. And I've never had this attention given to me. And I've never had this appreciation, I guess, of who I am given to me because I've been booted out of my family. And it's like, well, what's wrong with me? And all of a sudden somebody's saying, there's nothing wrong with you. You're awesome. I love you so much. I want to have sex with you.
This reminded me of when Gabriel told me that Dad had confessed his love for him. Was he truly in love with these boys? It was clear to me that my father was a pedophile, but I didn't really know what it meant.
To be a pedophile means that in your fantasies during sexual arousal and masturbation, there will come out the body scheme of children.
Professor Klaus Beyer is doing extensive work in the field of child sexual abuse prevention and is an expert in pedophilia.
Is a kind of sexual disorder. It is well known by the World Health Organization. So we know that it starts during puberty, manifests during puberty, and remains stable from this point. It's the same like sexual orientation. So pedophilia is a kind of sexual orientation, but it's a kind of orientation you never can act out. So the person would have these fantasies will repeat and repeat because it's a program in the brain.
Did he normalize it? Was he like, this
totally.
is just what we do?
Totally. No, he made it feel like it was actually 100% normal and, don't tell anyone. But, this is fine. It's all good. And I believed him and I did. I totally believed him. And to a point, I guess I was right into it for a long time.
Yeah.
So, 3 or 4 years, it was like, no, I don't care. And I was also very scared of him too, because he was a very overbearing man. Like, if you did anything wrong, he threatened to do stuff that was beyond my comprehension. So he made it really difficult for me to actually complain about anything.
No matter how good the good bits are, there needs to be an element of fear. For my dad, it was to be menacing with his power. Glenn believed that Ralph held the key to his undoing. And I think an important note when you said, there were 4-year period where you enjoyed it. Whatever a child does in a situation doesn't mean a thing because a child legally can't give consent. So whatever your enjoyment, whatever you did...
I didn't know.
Exactly. But that's not to be put into question.
But at the same time, I've got to say that the whole time I was actually considering the fact that, well, what have I got here? I've got this, or I've got nothing.
Exactly.
And that was exactly how I felt. It's like, well, I have nothing other than this, so I have to do this to make sure that I've got what I want.
Yeah.
So I was being just as selfish as he was in some ways, but at the end of the day,
You were a child.
I should never have been put into that situation. I mean, we know that in hindsight, but hindsight is 20/20. We all get it 20/20, you know, after the event. You know, you go through all that time feeling shame and guilt and whatever else, and all of a sudden it's like, hang on, that's not right. That's all wrong.
2020 vision. Where was my father's? When would you say was the first time you realised that what was happening between you and Ralph was abuse?
All right, well, now that's a weird one because I wouldn't say that I actually considered abuse at all until I was probably 18. But I'd stopped it when I was about 16.
This might be really personal, but Gabriel, the extent of abuse that he inflicted on Gabriel, he got to touching, but he never penetrated.
He penetrated me.
Yeah, right.
No, he didn't think twice about that. But he made sure I was really drunk first.
Oh.
So he'd come home from lecturing at RMIT when he was lecturing. He'd come home from lecturing and he'd bring back a bottle of brandy. And I'd drink half it. And I was like 13, so I was blind. And, you know, I'd get to the point I was passed out pretty much. And I'd wake up with a sore ass. I guess it was his method. I don't actually understand the psychology of that, but probably was easier for him because he'd get as drunk as I was. I'd be blasted, you know, half a bottle of brandy. It was always brandy.
The fact that my father would get drunk and force alcohol onto a minor made me think that he knew what he was doing was wrong. It got to a point where my father no longer needed Glenn. He had a new family. That family was ours. My father cut Glenn out of his life around the time that Gabriel was growing into the age of his attraction. He'd found a new outlet for his affliction.
Obviously, he confessed his love to me, and then I was like, fuck off. The rejection, I think from that moment on, like, the decline was already happening. And obviously, it's almost like he went back to the old patterns and he was doing the fraud thing again. It's like, so it makes me think about what happened the first time with Glenn. You know, what was going on then when Glenn's probably gone, fuck off, had enough. And then he's committed the fraud and then boom, boom, boom. It's almost like it was another cycle coming. Things are working in cycles.
And do you think that in between you and Glenn then he was like kind of okay?
Yeah, I think he was just keeping a lid on it, you know, but then obviously found me as an outlet to like let that, whatever it was, go. And then when I pulled that away, it was like, okay, fuck, what am I going to do now?
Do you think he needed to control people in his life?
Well, he needed to control himself because that was all this suppressed stuff. Like, how do you hold on to that? It's through control. And then it just like, you know, it gets misdirected some other way.
Yes.
Or usually always in a bad way because you're not confronting it, you're controlling it.
I wonder if it got to a stage in his life that he actually was conscious of what he was doing and that was against the good, the values that he had. If he starts committing all the fraud so he could go to jail, so he could be punished by...
punishing himself.
Yeah. So he could be punished by what he was doing. I have to do something to punish myself here because it was crazy what he was doing. Getting money here and forging documents. Come on, he was a lawyer. He knew what he was doing.
My dad repeated a cycle of fraud at the same time that his outlets, Glenn and Gabriel, stopped the abuse. Was he committing fraud to put himself in jail, to punish himself? Or did he unravel because his outlets were taken away from him?
Another half a century, I'm probably not going to be here. So I don't think I'll be celebrating 100.
I'd been calling my dad a pedophile to describe his crimes. It was only after researching more about the affliction that I discovered the problematic nature of language and how it affects the public perception of who these people are.
I think the easiest way to understand it is to see pedophilia as a risk factor for child sex offending, not a defining factor.
Dr. Kelly Richards is a senior lecturer in the School of Justice at QUT. Specialising in restorative justice and sex offending, I asked her take on the issue.
It's by no means inevitable that somebody with paedophilia will offend sexually against a child, and it's by no means the case that a child sex offender has to have paedophilia.
We know that about 40 to 50% of all sex offences are done by pedophilically inclined offenders. The other 50%, or maybe 60%, is done by non-pedophilically inclined offenders. For prevention, you can reach out for the pedophilically inclined. Why? Because they know that they have these kind of fantasies. They know that from their puberty. You can offer prevention for these persons and tell them, we know you are there, and we know that you didn't choose this way of kind of sexual orientation. The problem is that society is not capable to deal with these persons. There's more a kind of demonization and stigmatization, and so the person will hide their secrets. They will try to be normal, and they will marry, and they will deal with their problem in a socially isolated way. And this will enhance the probability of acting out.
I'd always considered pedophiles as monsters, living on the outskirts of society, circling school playgrounds, or alone in the dark scouring the web. I'd never thought that they could live functional lives as trusted figures within families. My dad.
For me, it's pretty hard to grasp this idea, because when you dedicate your life for 20 years to a person and you truly love that person and you trust and you believe that you are being, it's that feeling is reciprocated. So it's still quite hard for me to grasp the idea that he was using me. Did he use me because he saw an opportunity of abusing Gabrielle? Because he already had that ingrained in him of being attracted to little boys, you know? Or is that an opportunity for him?
There's hardly any public discourse around understanding this affliction, or putting resources towards preventing pedophilically inclined men from offending. So if we pretend a problem doesn't exist, will it go away? What do we need to be doing to reduce the number of victims? I wondered if Germany's approach yielded any answers.
This is really a way to protect children. There is this group of men, and there is a significant number who would like to get help. They are help-seeking, and it's very smart to help them before they act out.
Professor Klaus Bayer is one of the founders of Project Dunkelfeld, a government-funded program that has been ongoing in Germany since 2005. It was established to provide a comprehensive therapy program for help-seeking pedophiles. The participants learn to deal with their sexual impulses in such a way as to ensure that neither children nor the participants themselves come to harm. Project Dunkelfeld's byline is, "You are not guilty because of your sexual desire, but you are responsible for your sexual behavior."
My motivation is to spread this prevention work internationally. Because pedophilia is, of course, in every country, in every culture. So you have to deal with this in Australia as well, as we do in Germany.
As a survivor of child sex abuse and having been raised by a sex offender, I believe we need to explore prevention methods for pedophiles to ultimately protect children. I want to be very clear. I believe in a victim-centered approach. We need both research into prevention and punishment for the crimes, not one or the other. By combining the two, maybe then we would start to see a reduction in the number of children who fall victim to sex offenders. Like Glenn, like Gabrielle, like myself, that's 3 in one family.
We need a strong law enforcement system. And for the politicians in Germany, this is very convincing. They understand it. Okay, this is not a guy who tried to convince us just doing prevention and just doing treatment and everything will be good. It's not possible.
While I've learnt so much about the affliction of pedophilia, in no way does it excuse my dad's behaviour. He was a child molester, a repeat offender, and never owned up to his crimes. I thought back to the time that I was being abused and how much my dad downplayed the child pornography incident. He allowed a crime to go unreported. With everything I know now, I can't help but think that he did that to protect himself, not me. Glenn expressed to me that he feels somewhat responsible for Gabrielle's abuse. Survivors often carry the shame of their abusers.
But at the end of the day, if I had stood up and said something, then it may not have happened. And maybe...
Well, I don't think it's not your...
No, I know, but at the same time, you imagine that, well, if I had said something...
I mean, I think this is why what we're doing now is so important, because prevention won't come unless these sort of things that keep happening are spoken about.
It took me, well, I'm 49. It took me, how many years to realise that all the things that have happened in my life have shaped the way I think and the way I do things. In some ways I feel like I'm doing it right now, but I wasn't, because I wasn't being honest. And I hated that. And it meant that I couldn't maintain relationships with people because I wasn't being honest with them. I wasn't being exactly who I was. I was pretending to be someone else. I was being someone who I wasn't to suit other people's agendas, So, well. But I'm 49, I'm saying that. I don't want anybody else to have to wait that long.
Yeah.
Do it now.
Yeah, speak your truth.
Yeah. Own whatever's happened to you.
Yeah.
Deal with
and
it, move forward.
Don't be ashamed.
No, well, guilt and shame is one of those things that they cripple you.
Yeah.
They make it really hard for you to actually do anything other than be a sheep. I don't have any ill feeling about anything. I don't.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, actually.
I don't feel angry anymore. I don't feel ripped off.
Where are you at in your journey? Do you feel any resentment, any need to confront
Not like
him?
I did.
Not like you did?
No. Honestly, if I'm going to work with the way I'm thinking at the moment, I think he knows, and I think he's always known.
We had this conversation in 2017, 33 years after Glenn's abuse. We shared the experience of being sexually abused as children. Glenn seemed to be moving on from Ralph without anger, but I wasn't at that point. I wished I could confront my dad. My younger brother, Matt, was processing this too.
This is the complicated aspect of it, is that there's no face-to-face forgival. Forgiveness has to come from within. It has to be an internal process. So it would be easier to be able to talk to this person, Ralph.
Well, I don't think you would be able to. Not right now. I don't think you would be able to look him in the eye.
But this is the thing. If he took ownership of it and broke down and realised the severity of everything that he has done, then there's an element of closure to it.
I was so far from closure. My father had done to my brothers what my cousin had done to me. I developed a rage complex. Like my father, I was perpetuating a cycle of abuse. I had a dark side that I was hiding, and I needed to face it. Next time on the final act of Silent Waves.
The underbelly, the other side, wasn't just a thing that popped up here and there. It was clearly a whole life.
It feels like there's a tiger in the room, and we look around and there is no tiger, but the tiger's in our head.
I had to step back and realize that you were hurting, and the only person that you could hurt really was me.
And you told me you wanted to kill me like so many times. You know I was scared of you.